I'm lucky enough to spend a big chunk of my life in some wild country. But in all of my wanderings, I've seldom come across a place as wild as the jungles of South America. And I've never come across guys as wild as these. They are Tsimane. And while I hunt and fish because I choose to live this way, they do it because they have to. And for the next 3 episodes, I'm going to be doing it right along with them. I'm Steven Rinella. To me, hunting isn't only about the pursuit of an animal. It's about who we are and what we're made of. I live to hunt and hunt to live. I am a meat eater. The jungle sprawls out below, mile upon mile upon mile. It's both attractive and repelling. Something pulls me toward it, this desire to understand its mystery. But something else tells me I have no business here, that on my own, I would simply rot into the ground. I'm a few hundred miles northwest of Santa Cruz, Bolivia, headed towards the remote Mission Fatima, located on a distant tributary of the Amazon. I was invited here by a couple of guys who have a fledgling business, Angling Frontiers, taking people on a challenging expedition into a rarely seen area, primarily to catch a beautiful and powerful fish called the golden dorado. These trips are made possible by the indigenous Tsimane people, who are hired to help make the journey up the river. The Tsimane own the land, and they even have their own autonomous government. If they don't want you here, you don't go here. So the fact that these guys have permission to go in there at all is a rare thing, and something I knew I had to take advantage of. This old Catholic mission is the only way into or out of the area besides a very long boat ride. It provides Western medicine, clothing, and education to the various settlements in the region. It's the only real connection the Tsimane have to the outside world. While there are some converts, in general, the Tsimane simply accept the presence of the missionaries as helpful neighbors. Previously, the Tsimane had been a nomadic people, but the arrival of the mission gave them something of a hub to settle around. It's in Mission Fatima where I meet up with Patrick and Federico, the guys who invited me down. The thing that drew me to these two was their shared love of adventure. Born in Bolivia and educated in the U.S., they will be my guides and translators on this trip.
When you guys are running your expeditions, do you select people that you work with from all the communities?
We try to help the communities that are the furthest upriver. You know, they really don't have an opportunity to come down here to the mission too much.
When you get farther away from the mission, they live more of like a hunter-gatherer, hunting and fishing lifestyle.
They're a lot more independent and a lot more self-sufficient in that way because they can't rely on the Western world, or they can't rely on other folks that are traveling upriver.
But are they excited about the opportunity?
Oh yeah.
They like to go?
They love going there just because to them it's also an adventure. Once we get past Pachene, we won't see any settlements.
Yeah.
Once we get to main camp, from that point on, the boat cannot go any further. So we'll be doing a lot of wading, hiking through the jungle, cutting through to the river.
So 3 days just hardcore point A to point B.
Yeah, we'll just be moving, pushing, pulling, moving rocks.
Yeah.
This place, it's amazing, but it makes you work for its wonders. And it'll all be worth it.
As the hired Tsimane crew load up the long wooden boats that we'll be traveling in, the true foreignness of this situation starts to sink in for me.
Labor is not in short supply around here, you gather. We'll have maybe 12, 15 local guys who run the boats and do other stuff, just help out around camp, you know, do paid labor, so just to get some money. But it does feel funny because, like, usually you go out camping, you're carrying your own gear, you know, but here it's sort of like you have a big staff of people. It gives me this very uncomfortable colonial sort of feel that's very hard for me to get rid of, but who am I to say that if they want to go, they shouldn't go, because I don't want to feel like a colonial type person. So you get caught in this kind of, it's a funny feeling to me to have people carrying my stuff around.
Normally, when I go on a hunt, I'm after something in particular. A limit of geese, a mature black bear, something I could put my thumb on. But in this case, I really have no preset expectations.
No estamos olvidando nada. Ya está todo bien. Belleza.
The fishing is the catalyst, sure, but what I really want to do is see how the Tsimane exist out here on a river trip, how they hunt, how they eat, how they live. And I want to share that experience with them, to see the world through their eyes. I want to connect with them on some level as a hunter and fisherman, to not be some guy whose gear they just lug around, but someone who's truly interested in what they do, an equal who wants to learn from them. That is what is foremost on my mind as we start our trip.
And you realize that it's just a huge goal.
It's been raining at night a lot, which has stirred up the clay that lines the river basin, turning the water to the color of chocolate milk. It's troublesome because Patrick and Federico had pushed the idea of sight fishing the Dorado, literally casting flies right in front of their noses. That just wouldn't be possible in these conditions, but they assure me that farther upriver where we're headed, the water will be crystal clear.
Here you can finally see the ground starting to rise up, and we're actually going toward that more distant peak. I mean, we're going like way up into this stuff where we'll be in some legitimate topography after a while, but that's still a couple days ahead.
Our destination lies beyond the utmost village of Pachene, where even most of the Tsimane have never ventured. Up there, the river becomes much more treacherous, so we're going to stop in the village of Kuchisama to enlist some extra hands.
Hola. Hit your knee. Hit your knee, Benji. Buena. Hit your knee. Get over here.
The contrast between this place and the mission is striking. Here more things are made from native materials, and there is very little adornment. Things feel much more like part of the landscape. This is where I meet Alberto.
Alberto? Steven.
A seasoned hunter who is going to join us for the rest of the trip.
He made all these?
Yep, he made them.
This is bow? Does he hunt with this bow?
¿Con cuál casa usted? ¿Con esta o con esta?
He shows me the bow and arrow rigs that the Tsimane use, and he's kind enough to sell me one that he built with his own hands. Tsimane bows are long and thin, and each set has several arrows with different tips for different game. Fish, birds, big game.
I need to see his hand. I want to see his hand.
A ver, muéstrele cómo agarra su mano.
Something like that. Finger like that.
Already I can tell I'm going to like this Alberto guy. He had no idea we were coming, and yet he's ready to go in minutes. No goodbyes to anyone, no asking anyone's permission. Just a grain sack full of gear, his bow, and an old Russian-made shotgun. We're headed to the jungle. Federico and Alberto greased the wheels of the nascent Tsimane political system by providing a little commerce on the villages along the river. So we make one more stop in the village of Pachene for some fresh produce, mostly plantains. We see a Tsimane garden where they cultivate imported and native fruits and vegetables, along with medicinal plants, and even plants that aid them in their hunting and fishing.
These guys are fixing to do a fish kill. This is a leaf that has a toxin. The plant's called barbasco. This kind of stuff's like widely used in South America. There's another one they use in the U.S. that comes from the South American plant called rotenone. Down here they use it to harvest fish. In our country they use it to like control fish. So if you want to do a fish kill, like if you get a river to get just too infested with non-natives like carp or whatever, you can dose the water with something called rotenone. When you put it in the water, it raises the fish up, but it doesn't kill them outright. They just come up to the surface and they're kind of stunned out. And then they'll shoot them with bows or collect them up. I mean, it smells like if you took some alfalfa and pulped it. Not much different. They said even if there's cattle around and cattle drink from the poisoned water right after you do it to kill the fish, it would kill the cow. They say it won't kill a person.
Once we have enough pulp, we go to a spot they've selected for this type of harvest. An isolated pool in an ephemeral side channel fed by just a trickle of the river's main stem. They seal off any possible avenue of escape for the fish and then go to work broadcasting the barbasco pulp into the water. After a while, you can start to see the fish come drunkenly to the surface in order to gasp air. It seems like you can just grab them, but you can't. They slip away. Instead, the Tsimane pick them off with their bows. It's a very easy way to gather a high quantity of fish for either food or bait, and it's also a good way to train young children how to shoot. For me, it's a little weird.
Personally, I feel way out of my element here. There's something in me from having like the influences that I had growing up about what's legal and illegal and like the saying, you know, shooting fish in the barrel and sporting chance and all that. But it's interesting to watch. They got, you know, 20 or so fish with a plant that grows right in their yard, which is cool. But I think that this is like a activity that is better observed. For me personally, it's better observed than participated in.
Back on the river for the final push, and in the spirit of when in Rome, I'm going to partake in one very ubiquitous custom.
You notice these guys have like a racquetball in their mouth all the time? Coca leaves.
Although this is the plant that cocaine is derived from, in this form it is much closer to chewing tobacco in its potency.
Do you know any Tsimane who do not chew coca leaves?
Yeah. Oh, the Christian ones.
The Christian ones do not chew coca leaves? Really?
For an extra kick, they add a little baking soda, which accelerates the chemical reaction.
Oh man, baking soda.
It soon becomes very clear to me why you might want that extra bump of energy from the cocoa. At this point, beyond the last settlement of Pachene, the river becomes increasingly more difficult to navigate. This may look rough, but to be honest, I couldn't be happier to be helping out. instead of sitting in my chair like some lazy ass.
You always ask yourself, like, why? You want to go up this river so bad. There's all these different motivations at work where you have people getting paid to go up the river. You have people going up the river because they want to get paid in the future, start a successful business. You have people going up the river because they're paying to go up there. But I think all those external motivations kind of dissolve away, and you realize that we just want to go up the river to go up the river. There's this anthropologist named David Meltzer, and in one of his books he talks about how you just can't really rule out the role of curiosity when it comes to colonizing new lands. Like, it's not always that you're pushed to places by necessity. The people go places, possibly, because they just wonder, like, wow, what's around the next bend?
We arrived at the base camp fairly early in the day, and while I was anxious to finally go hunting, it turns out the Tsimane tend to hunt primarily in the evening and at nighttime. So we set off for a series of deep fishing holes a couple miles from camp to do some fishing while we wait for the evening to set in. When we get there, the crystal clear water that we've been chasing the entire trip is nowhere to be found. It's mud and more mud.
Water clarity is very bad, but they say that that hole right there for that fish. The ruby?
Duro, dorado, mucho pescado.
Good. We're going to angle it.
One of the guys, Marco, one of the best hunters of the group, immediately sees a chance to poke some live bait. It's a sabalo, a fish that is sort of the cornerstone of the river's ecosystem. The Tsimane eat them daily, but so do the bigger, tastier fish. We're ostensibly looking for Dorado, though we're not allowed to keep them. Patrick and Federico have a self-imposed catch and release policy in place to ensure the population in these waters remains as high as possible. And while the Tsimane love to eat Dorado, they've come to understand the simple equation. More Dorado equals more visitors equals more money. It's an alluring bit of math. The other thing we're on the lookout for is a giant green catfish they call Maturo. While we're not allowed to eat the Dorado, the catfish are fair game. And a couple hours in, one of the Tsimane who I've dubbed Marky Mark snags one on his hand line. He tells me to grab the line and pull it in, and feeling the sheer power of that fish is pretty amazing.
Oh!
Watch the spines on it, on the pectorals. I don't know.
God damn. That was so cool. You'll check out something you've never laid eyes on before. That is a wild fish that lives in a wild place.
Not long after that, we snagged what we came here for.
Look at that thing. You gotta be kidding me.
Oh my God. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is a Dorado, man. Holy crap, this is a monster right here. This is one of the biggest Dorado we've caught, man.
That's a gorgeous fish.
Unfortunately, the excitement is short-lived. As we go to release the fish, it's slow to recuperate from the fight.
Yep.
It could be a crippling, perhaps fatal exhaustion, or it could be the crushing blow of a Tsimane's knee to its gill cover as we beached it. Whatever the case, it eventually manages to swim off on its own power, though it's hardly certain that the fish is going to live. I'm quickly reminded of why catch and release fishing tends to trouble me so much.
Here you have villages full of people who live very close to the land, and the bulk of their protein comes from this river. And so often people come into these unexploited native lands and they have in mind that they want something from the place, you know, and you want the people that live here to get with your program. And in my mind, what's beautiful about this area, what I've like come to admire is not what I came to see and do, but just witnessing a people's relationship to the food that they draw from their environment. And it's almost like the Dorado, rather than becoming a thing of beauty to me, it almost like tarnishes it to be that you would now talk these guys into that they have to scratch that off their favorite food list because it's of interest to us foreigners, you know. In some ways it feels like a whole new form of colonialism. Outsiders coming in and telling like the indigenous hunters, like, you need to get with my plan. See, my plan is good for your future. You should listen to me and do what I think you ought to do. Stop doing it the way you do it.
I'm not going to let it put a damper on the trip, though. All told, it was still a pretty magical day, hiking to this beautiful spot and having a chance to feel the power of those fish, especially that gorgeous catfish. That fish will most certainly be eaten. This adventure is just getting started, and with the evening setting in, I'm going to set off into the jungle with Alberto and Marco. No big group, no translators, just me and two seasoned Tsimane hunters. I have a feeling that things are going to get downright interesting.